Today's stuff we're going to learn is Ketubot Yugimel. Two very quick announcements. Just a reminder that the bookmarks are open again for orders. That bookmarks basically are bookmarks, one for each Mesechet of Seder Nashim. They have on them basic musagim, basic terms that will help you throughout your learning. Plus, it has a checklist of which dafim you've learned already, so you can keep track. They're free of charge, so you can go order them on our site. There's now a pop-up on the site. You can order them till Wednesday. And when I travel next week, I will be mailing them, which is the next announcement, which again, I'm traveling next week, so I will not be on Zoom for the next month. But the classes will be up as usual, so you can get them through the podcast, you can get them on YouTube, you can get them on our website, however you want to watch them. Just the Zoom won't be happening as usual, but the Shiurim will actually be up a few hours earlier than usual, because I'll put them up early in the morning, Israel time, so just take note. Okay, we're going to get started now. Let's just review very briefly where we were up to. We started with the Mishnah. We're going to have a whole slew of Mishnayot where we have a debate between Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer on the one hand, who are going to believe the claim of the woman, against Rabbi Yehoshua, who is not going to believe the claim of the woman. And the issue is going to be, in the first case, someone marries, and it's not specifically a woman per se, because she's a woman, it's a matter of the particulars of the case. So the man gets married, he says, oh, my wife's not a virgin. She claims, well, I was actually raped after we were engaged already, which means, right, there's no issue. When we got engaged, I was a virgin, and then I got raped, and, sorry for you, but there's nothing we could do, and you owe me exactly what you promised in the ketuba. And he says, no, well then, so then we'll get to later, but anyway, then he says, no, it's a mekach ta'ut. This is a mistake. I buried you on one premise. This must have happened before the betrothal, in which case you duped me and I want to divorce, basically either he's saying I want to divorce you or lower the amount of your ketuba. It's not so clear here what all the possibilities are. So Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer say, we believe her, and Rabbi Yehoshua says, we don't believe her. Okay, now what's the reasoning? We saw yesterday, number one, we have a bari claim. She knows because it's her body. He has no idea. He's just suggesting. So when you have a clear claim versus a possible claim, some people rule that we hold by the definite claim. Rabbi Yehoshua says, no, we go by chazaka. In order to take money out of someone's hands, and this happens in all sorts of monetary cases, the burden of proof lies on the person who wants to get the money out of the other person. She wants to get her full value of the ketuba. She has to prove to him that she's deserving of it, and she can't prove it. It's only her word against his, and therefore we don't believe her. To which the Gemara brought this other case when it was just monetary law, where we have a bari and a shema. Somebody says, I gave you money and loaned you money, and then the other person says, look, I don't know what you're saying. So his claim is not definitive, the other claim is definitive, and there we have a machloket between two sets of rabbis, and we tried to suggest that maybe it's the same thing, bari v'shema bari adif, definite and not definite. We go by the definite, versus those who say, no, keep the money where it is. And until you can prove it, you can't get the money out. To which we said at the end, not necessarily. It could be that the one who exempts there and says, we go by chazaka there, wherever the money is, would not say the same thing here and would actually agree with Rabban Gamliel. The woman is believed to get her money. They give two reasons. Because in our case, it's not just a bari claim, and that's the issue. There's also, number one, amigo, which means, migo literally means mitoch, from taking something from something else. Mitoch she'chola lagid, because she can, on account of the fact that she can claim a better claim. We're assuming, migo always works. We see this many, many times in the Shas, in the Gemara. Migo works by the following principle. If we think I'm lying, this is logical. When someone's lying, we assume if you're lying already, you're going to make the best lie possible. So if you're making a lie that's not as good a lie, or a less likely lie that you would say, like if you had a choice to say one thing or the other, you'd rather say the other thing, and you didn't, then we assume you must be telling the truth. So what's the case here? She says, I was raped. Now, she's better off saying, I'm a mukat eitz, for two reasons. If she says she's a mukat eitz, she doesn't disqualify herself down the road from marrying a kohen. If she says I was raped, she can no longer marry a kohen for the rest of her life. So that's number one. Number two, who wants to get up and say I was raped? We all know how difficult that is to get up in public and announce that, and forget about nowadays where people are trying to be more open about these things. Back in those days, it was, you definitely didn't want to go admit that. So if she was lying, she would have had a much better claim, and that's why she's believed. So that's one reason why maybe Rav Nachman, in the monetary case, who says leave it where it is, wouldn't say the same thing here. And secondly, we ended with that she has a chezkat betulim. Until we know otherwise, she retains her presumptive status, what we knew before. What do we know about her definitively before? She was definitely a virgin. All girls are born virgins. So we assume she's a virgin until proven otherwise. So that together with the Bari claim, that's why. But if you only have a Bari claim, maybe not. So Rav Nachman theoretically could hold like Rabban Gamliel, and now we're going to prove that in fact he must. Because last line of your bet, I'm a bet, hachinami mistabra. Likewise, it sounds this way, could become a mashninan, as we learned later, to Rav Nachman hu da'amar Rabban Gamliel. Okay, we're going to derive from something else that he must hold like Rabban Gamliel. Why? Because one psak halacha is going to disagree with a different psak halacha if we don't say that. Why? We have a principle that when Rav Nachman is in an argument with someone else and it's on a monetary issue, we hold like Rav Nachman. That means that in the case of manali biyadcha, and the other one said Eini Yodea, the classic case of Bari B'Shema, we hold like Rav Nachman. And what did Rav Nachman say? He's patur, right? We don't hold Bari B'Shema. We leave the money wherever it is. And now, if we would hold like him there, and he doesn't hold like Rabban Gamliel here, then we'd have to be holding. If we hold like him there, we have to be consistent, and we'd hold like Rabbi Yehoshua here. If what we thought originally was that he lines up with Rabbi Yehoshua. But we know that the halacha is like Rabban Gamliel by us, okay, which might make you happy, that we believe the woman, okay? Ubaha amar Rabbi Yehuda amar Shmuel halacha ke Rabban Gamliel. In our case, Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel that we hold like Rabban Gamliel. So it must be that if we hold like Rav Nachman there and we hold like Rabban Gamliel here, we assume that those two work together, which means that Rav Nachman must agree with Rabban Gamliel, because again, our case isn't a classic case of Bari B'Shema. There's more going on here. Just Bari B'Shema, Rav Nachman doesn't think it's okay. But because we either have a chazaka, that she was a virgin, or, right, that's her presumptive status until we know, right, we don't know anything else, and therefore she remains a virgin, or because of this migo that she has. She's believed because she could have made a better lie. The fact that she didn't mean she must be telling the truth. The whole logic of migo, by the way, the problem with the logic of a migo is once you know that there's a migo law, that this principle exists, so you can make a less good lie in order that you'll be believed. You follow, it becomes at a certain point, once the halacha is known, it becomes almost ineffective. It's a bit of a downside of a migo. Kind of operates on the working assumption that the person who is suspicious of lying might not know that this migo works, okay? That's just an aside about migo. New Mishnah. We're going to have a number of cases today where we're going to have the same split between Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer who believe the claim versus Rabbi Yehoshua who doesn't. Hi omeret mukat etzani. She says, they come for Tanat B'Tulim, claims she's not a virgin. She said, look, I had an injury. He says, no, you were trampled by a man. Okay, this language is a very unpleasant language. On the one hand, you could say the rabbis didn't have this sensitivity that we have of being politically correct and using the proper language and speaking in a way that has respect for the people involved, right? They didn't really feel that way. On the one hand, they do have what we call lashon segi nahor. They did use euphemisms. They didn't like to say things as they are. And the truth is, I think that's why he says drusat isha. Because he doesn't want to say you slept with a man. So he says you were trampled by a man, as if like he doesn't have to say the word you had relations with a man. So, but it ends up sounding incredibly unpleasant. And we just have to accept that their use of language was very different nowadays, and their sensitivity to what words they used to say things was not the same sensitivity that we have today. So just take it and move on. Anyway, he says, you obviously slept with another man. Not obviously. He claims. He doesn't really know. Again, we have a Bari, her definitive claim that I was injured. His suffix claim, right? Maybe you slept with another man. Rabban Gamliel Rabbi Eliezer omrim ne'emenet. Rabbi Yehoshua omer lo mipi anochim ela hareza b'chezkat drusat ish ad shtivi raya l'dvareha. We're going to assume she's a drusat ish until she brings proof. Why is that? Same logic as last time. This is a monetary debate, and we're going to see exactly what money each one is claiming. Okay, that's going to be a machloket, the first thing the Gemara is going to talk about, what the monetary debate is. But again, in a monetary debate, Rabbi Yehoshua is going to say, the other side has to prove, till they can prove they can't take money out, so she can't get money from the husband for a ketuba unless she can prove it. Now, doesn't mean she can't get any money, doesn't mean she can get some of the money. That's going to be our debate. What is their claim? Meaning, how much money of the ketuba is each one claiming? What does each one come to court saying? Rabbi Yochanan amal b'matayim umaneh. She says, I'm a mukat, and I get 200. I get a perfectly good ketuba because I'm still a virgin. I just had an injury. Remember, we had a machloket about a mukat. Remember, we had the rabbis said, Rabbi Meir said she gets 200. And the rabbis had said, no, mukat lowers her. She's really not a virgin, even though she's a virgin in a particular sense. Since her time is already torn, that already lowers her value to 100. So that's going to be the machlok between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar, who they hold by. So if Rabbi Yochanan holds by Rabbi Meir and says that she's claiming mukat, she's claiming I get 200, my full ketuba value, then when he says, no, I think you slept with someone, he's obviously dropping it to the next level, which is, he says, no, you're not a virgin, and your ketuba is only going to be 100. Rabbi Eliezer amal, okay, these are two Amoraim debating. He had to understand the Mishnah. B'mana v'lo klum. Rabbi Elazar says she's claiming 100 because mukat, according to the rabbis, only gets 100. She's saying, I still get a ketuba. I'm not nothing, right? I'm not a virgin at all. I'm a mukat, I get 100. And he's claiming you dupe me, and this is an ekach ta'ut, and you get nothing. Okay? Now, we're going to have deal with their shitot and why they hold what they hold, and then ask some questions of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan amar b'matayim umanen. Why? Savar like Rabbi Meir, as I told you already. He holds like Rabbi Meir. Mukat is 200. Tamar beini kirba bein loi kirba. Remember, we had this whole discussion just before. Whether he knew before the marriage or didn't know before the marriage she was a mukat, she still gets matayim according to Rabbi Meir. The Rabbi Elazar omer b'mana v'lo klum. So why does he hold? She holds 100 and he holds 0. Savar like Rabbanan da'amre beini kirba bein loi kirba maneh. The rabbis hold if she's a mukat, it doesn't matter whether he knew or didn't know, she gets 100. Remember, that was our conclusion from yesterday, that there was Rami Bar Chama who tried to say it depends whether she knew or didn't know. The rabbis have this distinction, and if he didn't know, he knew. I think I said she by accident. Whether he knew or didn't know, and according to one Rami Bar Chama, if he didn't know, then he's going to claim 0. She gets nothing. Okay, so here they say again, okay, and therefore she claims, I'm a mukat. It's true you didn't know, but it doesn't matter that you didn't know because we don't hold by Rami Bar Chama. We hold that it doesn't matter whether he knew or not, she still gets 100 because she's a mukat only. Bishlama, okay, so that's why Rabbi Eliezer says, she says mana, and he claims you weren't a mukat, you slept with someone, and because you slept with someone, you get nothing. So now we're going to say, Bishlama Rabbi Elazar, lo kama Rabbi Yochanan. We understand very easily why Rabbi Elazar doesn't hold like Rabbi Yochanan. Why? We're going to have this Bishlama structure a lot today. So let me explain what Bishlama, how it works. Okay, for those who don't remember. Bishlama means we're going to take either 2 opinions, could be 3 opinions, could be 4 opinions, could be a list of items that were mentioned in some source, and say, the following things make a lot of sense. That's the Bishlama part. Bishalom, they work together, they make sense. This makes sense because of the following. However, it's always going to have an ella, but something else doesn't make sense to us. And on that, we're going to ask a question, and almost always it has an answer. Once in a blue moon, it ends without an answer, but usually it has a resolution. So we understand Rabbi Elazar, why he doesn't hold like Rabbi Yochanan, to kamoke like a Rabbanit. Whenever we have a machloket between an individual and the rabbis, we hold like the rabbis. We hold by the majority opinion. So he wants to hold like the rabbis, and the rabbi said a mukat only gets 100, which means that when she claims I'm a mukat, she's only claiming 100. If he disagrees, he must be saying 0. Ela Rabbi Yochanan, my time alone, Rabbi Elazar. But why would Rabbi Yochanan pick the minority opinion of Rabbi Meir? So the answer is based on another issue we came up yesterday that there was a debate about. Kasaval, we saw this machloket yesterday. Somebody betrothed someone thinking she was a virgin, and turns out she had relations with someone before. does it just mean that we drop her ketuba from 200 to 100 because she wasn't a betula? Or can he claim, mekach ta'ut, you lied to me, and I'm not giving you anything, right? I'm going to divorce you right now, and I'm not going to give you a ketuba at all. So that's a debate. Now, Rabbi Yochanan is not going to be able to hold like Rabbi Elazar because in that machloket of k'nesavachas kapitula v'nimtzei peula, he holds yesh la ketuba maneh, she gets 100. So if he thinks, now that means that the husband's claim, you're not a betula, not because you're a mukat eitz, but because you slept with someone, his claim would have to be that you get 100, because Rabbi Yochanan doesn't think that in that kind of case you could claim 0. Well, now if you're going to go to her claim and she says mukat eitz, and you're going to hold like the rabbis that mukat eitz only gets 100, well, now you're going to be saying he claims 100 and she claims 100. There's obviously no argument there. If she's going to claim 100 and he's going to claim 100, they obviously have no argument, right? There's no relevance whether the reason she gets 100 was because she was a mukat eitz or because she was a beula, right? It doesn't make a difference. So that can't possibly be what the Mishnah is talking about, and therefore Rabbi Yochanan has no choice because of what he holds on the other issue. Someone who thinks his wife was a virgin, it turns out she slept with someone before they were betrothed, she gets a ketuba of 100. Well, then it has to be by default that she's claiming 200. And that's why he has no choice but to say this Mishnah holds like Rabbi Meir. So, Bishlama, now we're going to have another question against Rabbi Yochanan. Bishlama Rabbi Elazar, Hainu Dekatani Tarte. Now the question is, why do we have the previous Mishnah and this Mishnah? They're basically both saying the same thing. There's a monetary debate between him and her. How did she lose her virginity, right? Or when did she lose her virginity, right? And how? And, right, one says Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer believe her, Rabbi Yehoshua believes him. So why is there a point to have two different Mishnayot? To which the Gemara says, so Rabbi Elazar, it makes a lot of sense that there's two. Why? Because each one is coming, now here it's saying the Mishnah is coming to basically say we don't hold by a different opinion of an Amora that's going to come in the future. So you have to understand here, it's something a little hafuch that's going on, a little opposite, but we're taking a Mishnah and saying the Mishnah is coming to disqualify an opinion that's going to come in the future, to basically say this opinion is wrong, okay? So again, it's not like the Mishnah foresaw the future, it's that the Mishnah understood all the possibilities that people might say and therefore wanted to say, don't think this, okay? So, according to Rabbi Elazar, again, who says, she says 100, he says 0, it's to prove, to prove that Rami Bar Chama is wrong. What did Rami Bar Chama say? Again, it's to focus on, if she claims mukat eitz, and he didn't know that before the wedding, or before the betrothal, could he claim, Rami Bar Chama said, if he didn't know about it, he could claim mekach ta'ud and I give her nothing. Here, she's claiming mukat eitz and he didn't know. Obviously, they don't think she gets nothing. Otherwise, why would she be claiming that? So according to this Mishnah, it's clear that if she says mukat eitz and he didn't know about it beforehand, she still gets a ketuba of 100. And that basically says, Rami Bar Chama, you can't possibly be right. So that's why we need our Mishnah. Why do we need the previous Mishnah about Misha Erastani Ne'enasti, when she says I was raped and he says no, it was before the engagement? And that's the other machloket that we just mentioned. He said, then in a case where you marry her when she's a betula and it turns out she was a beula, she already had relations, she gets 100. Now, Rabbi Elazar is claiming no. According to that Mishnah, he's claiming mekach ta'ut, right? And Rabbi Yehoshua paskins that way. So we're basically saying, what's his claim? Forget about the Rabbi Yehoshua paskins that way. The point is, what's his claim? His claim is 0, right? I said it wasn't so clear before, but now according to this, we read the previous Mishnah as his claim is 0. So if his claim is 0, that means if he was duped by her, he gets nothing. That's to disagree with Rav Chia bar Avin in the name of Rav Sheshet, who says she still gets 100. Okay, so each Mishnah is coming to preclude an opinion that someone might claim in the future. But Elazar Rabbi Yochanan, who holds like Rav Chia bar Avin Amar Rav Sheshet, so he doesn't need a Mishnah to preclude that opinion. Tarte lamali, what do you need 2 Mishnahs for? So they answer, well, we do need it. Why? Each one is to stress the strength of one of the opinions. How does this work? Kamaita, the first one, yesterday's Mishnah, is lo diachol kochod Rabbi Yehoshua. Period. Even though, remember yesterday we said, why didn't she say mukat? Because she didn't say mukat, we believe her claim that she was raped. Or it's more likely we're going to believe her claim because she has a bari claim against his shema claim, his undefinitive claim, and she has a migo in her favor. And yet, even though she's got all that going for her, Rabbi Yehoshua still doesn't believe her. That's the chiddush of the first Mishnah. And the chiddush of the second Mishnah, Batraita, our Mishnah is, Lo diachol kochod Rabban Gamliel. Now, I didn't talk about this when we read the Mishnah, but now we're going to talk about it. In our Mishnah, you can't use a migo. There is no migo claim in our Mishnah. She's giving the best claim she could possibly give. If she's lying, this would be the best lie she could say. So there's no migo claim, because the best thing she could say is, I'm a mukat, right? If he claims you don't have betulim, she says basically, I was a mukat. No, it's obvious she doesn't have betulim. She just has to give an excuse for it. This is the best excuse she can make. She doesn't have a claim. We can't make a claim for her. Oh, she must not be lying, because if she was lying, she would have made the best claim possible. This is the best claim possible. So therefore, even without a migo and just the fact that she's buried and is definitive and he's not, we're going to believe her. Again, this idea of definitive is very interesting, right? It's basically saying, we believe the woman about her own body, right? What does the husband know, right? It's exactly what you would have thought. What does he know about what happened to me? I'm believed to say what happened to my own body if that things that I know about that no one else knows about. Again, obviously, I could still be lying. So it doesn't, you understand the weakness in that. Because then anytime, so when we could say, oh, I'll say anything about my body because who's going to discount it? It's exactly what goes on with sexual harassment cases where you never know who to believe because it's his word against hers, right? It's very complicated. You really don't know. You want to be sympathetic and say the woman must be telling the truth, and we have no way to know she's not telling the truth. On the other hand, we have no way to know if she is telling the truth. It's very complicated. So these are the issues that really the Gemara is grappling with, or the Mishnah, right? And Rabbi Yehoshua and Rabbi Eliezer on the one hand against Rabbi Yehoshua. Next Mishnah. Now we're going to move off of Dinei Mamonot. Dinei Mamonot, it's very clear that Rabbi Yehoshua is going to be strict because he holds in order to take money out of someone's hands, and here we're talking about the ketuba, you need proof. And we don't have proof, so I'm not going to believe her. But in these cases, we're going to see that Rabbi Yehoshua still doesn't believe her, and it's not a Dinei Mamonot case. It's not a financial issue. Ra'uha medaberet im echad. They see her speaking with a man. Okay, speaking obviously doesn't mean just speaking, because we're going to suspect that much more happened. We're going to have a big debate, and that's going to be most of our daf today, dealing with these two different opinions about what exactly it means, midaberet. Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. So they start with a man. She's not married, by the way. She's a single woman. They see her doing something with a man. We don't know yet what. They're suspicious that she had relations with him, or maybe they know she had relations with him. We'll see soon. And then they want to know, did you have relations with a person who will now disqualify you from marrying a kohen, a woman who has a relationship with mamzer, a natin, halal, eved, non-Jew. All those people preclude her from marrying a kohen. So now, if they see her speaking with this person, okay, again, it doesn't mean speaking, so we'll get to that later. Right now, I'm just translating literally. And they said, who is this person? They don't know the guy. They didn't recognize him, and nobody knows who it is. So maybe they only saw his back. We don't know. And she says, Ish ploni v'kohen. Now, the two differences about this case, number one, it's not monetary. Number two, no one's claiming against her. There's no one who comes with a counterclaim. She says, it's so-and-so, and he's a kohen. Kohen here doesn't mean literally a kohen. It means he's kosher, okay? Meaning, I can marry a kohen tomorrow. Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer omrim ne'emenet. Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer say she's believed. For Rabbi Yehoshua Meir and can marry a kohen there. Rabbi Yehoshua and Rabbi Eliezer omrim, Rabbi Yehoshua Meir lo mipia anu chayim. We don't believe her. We have to assume, and there's a crazy assumption, because what's the percentage of people in the community that are mamzerim natinim, right? We have to assume he's a mamzer or a natin or anyone else who's going to basically disqualify her from marrying a kohen, unless she can bring a proof. Second case, haitama uberet. This is obviously more than the previous case. She's pregnant. Okay? She's, again, a single woman and pregnant. We don't know who the father is. So who's the father? Mi'ish Ploni v'Kohen, again, she says is from Mi'ish Ploni, is a Kohen. Again, the whole issue is, did she have relations with a person who's going to disqualify her from marrying a Kohen? She says no. Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Meir, they believe her. Rabbi Yehoshua, Omer, lo mipia anu chayim, we don't trust her. Until she brings proof, we assume the child is right. She's disqualified, basically. We'll talk about the child as well as we go on. So first, the Gemara brings this big machlok. We have witnesses that saw her go into a room alone with a man. That's it. Nothing more than that. Rav Asi amar niv'ala. We have witnesses that they actually had relations together. Somebody watched them do it. So Bishlam is Zeiri. We're now going to have 5 sources that are going to raise a question against one of these opinions. 4 out of the 5, okay, numbers 1, 2, 4, and 5 are going to be against Rav Asi. Number 3 is going to be against Zeiri. We're going to have answers to all of them, except the last one, which is going to remain a problem to Rav Asi. So Bishlam is Zeiri. Zeiri makes sense. Hainu dekatani midaberet. That's why they use the language midaberet sounds more like midaberet is speaking, sounds more like she went into a room alone with a man, she was talking to him, then they went alone in a room, right? Again, it's not exactly, but it's at least closer than actually having slept with him, right? You would think, Elazar Rav Asi, my midaberet. Why would you say midaberet? You would say it as it is, right? Because going into a room alone is like an unclear act, right? Midaberet also. Whereas nivala is very clear. She had relations with him. So what do they answer? No, lishana ma'alia. It's a euphemism. That's what I talked about before. The rabbis don't like to say she had relations with him. They'd rather just say she was talking to him, and everybody knows talking means, oh, they have relations. So we're going to prove this, kedichtiv. Now, we're not going to prove this from a verse that says, uses the language of speech to mean they have relations, but it does use a different language to indicate sexual relations, even though, right, they could have said it directly, they didn't say it directly. It's a verse from Mishlei, which actually starts off, they don't give you the beginning, Kain derech isha min ha'efet. This is the way of a woman who is an adulteress, which means she's having sexual relations, and it says, achla machata piyah, she eats and she wipes her mouth clean, va'amra lo pa'alti aven, and she says, I didn't do anything. So here they use eating as a euphemism for it. Likewise, we could say speaking as a euphemism. That was question number 1. Question number 2. We understand why there's 2 cases in the Mishnah, midaberet and me'uberet, because midaberet is she was just suspected of having had relations with someone, and me'uberet is it's clear she did. But obviously, Elazar Rav Asi, tarte lamali, what do you need 2 for if they're both saying cases where definitively she had sexual relations with someone? So chadalach shir ba, chadalach shir bebita. The answer is 1 case was talking about saying she's okay. That's the first case. We're going to let her marry a kohen according to Rabban Gamliel. And the second case is coming to say, even her daughter, because there's a daughter in the case, right? She's pregnant. There's a daughter or a son. But the point is, if she has a daughter, even her daughter can marry a kohen. That's why they bring a case of mu'uberet to show even her offspring from that relationship. So they say, and we're going to get to this machloket later. That's only if you say Rabban Gamliel who permits the daughter as well. But there's a side that says, some people say Rabban Gamliel permitted her, but didn't permit her daughter. Her daughter for sure is disqualified. We'll see later why that is. How can you explain it according to that opinion? Rav Asi doesn't make sense according to that opinion. To which you simply answer, Rav Asi said, Rav Asi holds by the opinion that works better with his opinion. Okay, and that's how we resolve. Number 3, this is the one that's negative, it's against Zeiri. Amalei Rav Papa Labai. Zeiri da'amar ma medaberet nistera, v'amar Rabbi Yehoshua lo mehemna. Rabbi Yehoshua doesn't believe them just because they went into a room alone. That sounds very weird. Ha'amar Rav, malkina le'ichud ve'ein osrim le'ichud. Rav says, we give you, if you go into a room alone, a woman goes into a room alone with a man, that's forbidden. That's called dina yichud. You're not allowed to do that because we're worried what might transpire. If she does anyway, we can give her lashes for it and him as well. But we don't start forbidding things based on yichud. We can't assume that you have relations with each other and therefore start forbidding, let's say, her to be in a relationship with his brother because she already had relations with him and all sorts of things that could come from that. We don't do that. So how could Zeiri say just because they went in a room alone, we're going to forbid her to marry a kohen now? We don't do that kind of thing. So Lema Deloka Rabbi Yehoshua. So first of all, you could say maybe that statement of Rab doesn't hold by Rabbi Yehoshua. So they say, well, afilu tema Rabbi Yehoshua, even if you say so, and now we get to the reason why Rabbi Yehoshua is so strict here, even though it's not a case of hamotzi mechaveo ala paraya, right? It's not dina mamano, it's not money, and he says you have to bring proof. Why here do we have to bring proof for her to be able to marry a kohen? Mala subi yochsin. He holds that when it comes to yuchsin, this is just a rabbinic law. It's not by Torah law. It's just a stringency of the rabbis who said, when it comes to kohanim, we want to be sure that we're keeping the yichus proper and that we're not marrying them off to anyone who maybe there's a, when we talk about how many mamzerim are there, how many netinim are there, maybe there's a 2% chance that it was a mamzer and a teen, or a 10% chance, or whatever it might be. The point is, when it comes to marrying kohanim, we have to be extra, extra careful in sechumra. And that explains Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yehoshua, sorry. Source number 4. Again, neged Rav Asi. Meitive. They saw in this bright, it says, they saw her going in hiding with someone. That sounds a lot like Rabbi Yehoshua, like Zeiri said it's just going into a room. Oh, lechorba. Now, what's the difference between nistira or lechorba? Well, lechorba is a place that's out in the middle of nowhere, and it's more likely, like a ruins, it's more likely that something's going to happen there than, let's say, she just goes into a room somewhere in the city or whatever. So they see her go into a nistira or lechorba, and then they ask her, what kind of person is this? Same like our Mishnah, and she says, kohen who? Who is the brother of my father, basically saying he's a kosher person. And yes, we're now in Amabed. Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer omrim ne'emen. Rabbi Yehoshua omer lo mipi anu chayim ela harei zo b'chezka pe'ula lenatinu lemamzer ad sheviraya ledvareh. Same machloket as before. So now the Gemara says, right, it's the same thing, it's just different language. So now they say, Bishlama l'ze'ereh hanu t'katani tarte, l'seiter or l'chorba. They're assuming l'seiter matches midaberet. L'chorba is it was definitive. And right, so seiter is they went into a room alone. We don't know exactly what happened. L'chorba is there's more going on. And therefore you want to bring both. Ella, right, and that's to prove that both think both, right? Rabbi Gamliel is in both cases, and Rabbi Yehoshua is in both cases. Ella Rav Asi damar nivala tarte lampli. If he says midaberet, which we're assuming corresponds to nistira, is definitive, and then l'chorba is definitive, then basically they're saying the same thing. So the first answer is chad katane. Just read it as one. L'seiter de chorba. She went into a room alone with him in a chorba. To which the Gemara answers, but that doesn't match the language of the Braita. V'ha l'seiter o l'chorba katane. It says there or there. Sounds like two different cases. So now they distinguish. They say nistira is she went in hiding into a place that was maybe ruins, but in a city. And the second one, l'chorba, means a chorba outside the city, in the desert. What's the difference, right? It's obviously much more likely that something happened, which is in a chorba in the desert where there's no one around. Utsricha. And not only that, there's something additional that we're going to talk about right now. Why do we need both? If you had had just chorba demata, where maybe you say for sure she had relations with someone, she was in a chorba, but you might have thought, what's the whole issue? It's not just did she have relations. We don't care so much if she did. The question is, who did she have relations with? In the city, most of the people are Jews, we're going to assume. So, and ksherim Jews. So therefore, we can assume there, if we just had that case, we'd say only their Rabban Gamliel permits her, because again, we go by the statistics. How many people in the city are ksherim? What's the probability that the person who she chose was one of those ksherim? High probability, therefore we'll allow her to marry a kohen. But if you're in a chorba in the desert, you're in a place without, no one's living there. Who goes by? There are all sorts of nomads. Who are the nomads? All sorts of people. There, most people there are not ksherim. And therefore, Rabbi Yehoshua. If you didn't say that case, you might have thought that Rabban Gamliel would agree with Rabbi Yehoshua in that case, that since the probability is high that he was not kosher, therefore, she must agree. Maybe Rabban Gamliel would hold like Rabbi Yehoshua. That's why the Braita needs to bring both cases to show no, even there, Rabban Gamliel permits it. So what if you just took the case in the desert? What would you have said? No, because then you could do the flip. You would say, Rabbi Yehoshua, that's what Rabbi Yehoshua doesn't believe because of the probability is high. But maybe in the city, maybe he admits like Rabban Gamliel that we're going to permit it. Sricha, so that's why you need both cases. And that we resolved all the issues. Now we get to source number 5. We're only going to get to the difficulty at the very end because we're going to have to first understand some things about this source that are not clear. So in fact, is the Tosefta from chapter 1, halacha 10 in the Tosefta Ketubot, Meitive. So now we're going to bring a difficulty. The case in the beginning, it's talking about she's pregnant. Okay, we find that she's pregnant, and then it says, Zo edut sha'isha ksherala. This is a case where we trust the woman. That's obviously quoting Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer. Doesn't say them by name, but it quotes them as the stam. Rabbi Yehoshua Omer ein ne'emenet. We don't believe the woman in this case. This is exactly the same we've seen before. But here we're going to have a more detailed discussion between them, an argument. He's going to try to prove their point. Really, Rabbi Yehoshua is going to poke a hole in Rabban Gamliel's approach. Amar lahem Rabbi Yehoshua, don't you agree with me in a case where a woman was taken into captivity? Now, the assumption in those days, you were taken into captivity, you were most definitely raped. So if she gets taken into captivity, there were witnesses that saw her get taken, and she comes back and says, I wasn't raped, we don't believe her. And basically, we don't allow her to marry a kohen. So don't you agree with me about that? Amru lo aval. Aval here means, yes, in fact, we do agree with you. To which he says, Umay flesh yesh ben zo lezo. So what's the difference between this case and that case? So we're assuming now remember, there's really 3 cases. There's the woman in captivity. There's the me'uberet, who definitely have relations. And then there's this safek me'uberet case, this woman who went into a room alone, but we don't really know what happens. So he says, Lezo yesh edim, lezo ein edim, which seems like they're saying back to him, we're talking about the nistera case, the case where they were alone in a room. Nobody really knows what transpired, okay? And that's why when she went into captivity, there's witnesses now. There's no witnesses that she had relations with some guy, but there are witnesses that she went into captivity. And this is what we call an anan sadeh, which means we all know it's clear as the sky that somebody raped her, in which case she's going to be disqualified from marrying a kohen. But in the case where she just went into a room alone, we have no idea what happens. 50-50 chance, unclear what chances are, but there's no witnesses at all, so there's no definitive issue. That's why we believe her. Amar lahem, he says to them, Af lezo yeshedim. But let's bring the me'uberet case. You disagree with me about the pregnant woman. Now, what better proof do you need? Sharei kres sabe and shina. Okay, this is a euphemism for saying she's pregnant, right? She's got proof that she definitely had relations with someone. There's no way to say it otherwise. So why don't you agree with me about that case? So now comes the part that's really unclear. They say to him, and I'm not going to explain it yet because the Gemara is going to say what's going on here. They say to him, Rov ovdei kochavim prutzim ba'arayotem. Most Gentiles are prutzim ba'arayot, okay, sleep around. And Amar lahem ein apitropos la'arayot. And he answers them, there's no guards for arayot, meaning if you put someone in charge to make sure someone doesn't sleep with someone else, there's no way to ensure it. Like no one's going to ever take that job on themselves because nobody is really able to stop that kind of thing from happening. So it seems to me, it's not exactly clear what it means. Anyway, what this has to do with anything is very unclear. Before we get there, we're just going to read the last line of Tosefta, then the Gemara is going to try to understand what happened here. By the way, the Tosefta says, in what case are we talking about? And we saw about this, there was a machloket about this. Be'edut isha begufa. It's the woman about herself. Aval edut isha bebitav. She's trying to testify about the child. Divrei hakol of vlad shtuki. For sure, the vlad is a shtuki. What is a shtuki? Shtuki means mishatkim oto. When the child tries to say who my father is, they silence them because, or maybe when they ask the child who the father is, the child has nothing to say because we don't know who the father is. So no matter what, this child has an unknown origin of their father, and that's going to seemingly disqualify them, although we're going to have to see how that can be explained according to the one who says they're not disqualified. So we'll get back to that later. So now the Gemara says, what did he say to them and what did they answer him? It's really the reverse. It's really what did they say to him and what did he say to them? Because we started getting confused by the part that they started with him and then he answered them. This is what they said to him. Hey, shavtani ala me'uberet. You got me on the me'uberet one. Okay? You said, right, the Muberet has proof, and you're right, she does have proof. It really is like the Shvuya. But I will give you an answer about the Muberet. Now, before we move on, this is a little bit tricky because Hishabtani means you basically beat me out here, which means that in the Muberet case, it sounds like Rabban Gamliel would admit to Rabbi Yehoshua that he's right. But that's not what happens. The Gemara is going to later paskin, even in a Muberet case, we hold like Rabban Gamliel, right? We saw before that we hold like Rabban Gamliel. So how could that be? So there's two answers given. One is to understand the Gemara the way we did, and yet say that what they're basically saying is, you make a convincing argument, but I still have a tradition about it. So while I agree with your argument, I still disagree with you halacha l'maaseh because we have a tradition that we believe the one. Tosefta says something different. He reads, if you look at the first Tosefta on the page, we're right when it comes to the Muberet. It's the opposite. It's not that you made a convincing argument. It's that we're right. Here's an interesting thing. When you're taken into captivity, you have no choice. You're raped. You're raped by the people who take you into captivity, who are generally Gentiles. So clearly you're with a Gentile. If you sleep around, you are the one who chooses who you sleep with. So while we're not putting you in a high place in society, we don't exactly approve of what you're doing, but we do make certain assumptions that you might not care about sleeping around, but you do care about messing yourself up for marrying a kohen later in life. So therefore, you're going to check who you're marrying and make sure they're kosher, who you're sleeping around with, make sure they're kosher before you do it. So it's an interesting theory. Do we believe that or not? Tosefta thinks we believe it, which means they have an answer against the Muberet also. Anyway, two opposite ways of reading that one line. Anyway, so what can you say about the Midaberet though? Amar lahem, he said to them, in other words, they say there's no witnesses there, right? She was just alone in a room with him. So why are you claiming we don't believe her? So Rabbi Yehoshua says to them, Midaberet hainu shvuya. I view it the same. Amrulo, they said to him, right? He thinks it's obvious she must have relations, just like with the shvuya. To which they say to him, and this is where the Ovdei Kochavim comes into the picture. Amrulo, shani shvuya, dirov Ovdei Kochavim putzim ba'alayoten. It's different when she's in captivity because it's Gentile people there, and most of them are putzim ba'arayot, and that's why it's more likely. Amar lahem hanami kevant istater en apitropos ba'arayot. You think only Gentiles are suspect? All people, nobody can stand up to going into a room alone and not doing it something, right? There's still a high likelihood, not that nobody can, but there's still a high likelihood, and that's why nobody will ever be an apitropos to stop someone from having a sexual relationship with someone, because we know that people have very strong urges, desires, and basically they'll fall into a trap as well. It's not just Ovdei Kochavim, and therefore when she was in a room alone with a man, we can assume that something must have transpired. Now, you probably don't remember this, but the whole reason we brought this source was to question Rav Asi, to which they say, Katani miatarte midaberet meuberet. They clearly distinguish here between a case when he went into a room alone with a man, she went into a room alone with a man, to a case where she's pregnant. That's not what Rav Asi said. Rav Asi said midaberet is there were witnesses that she had relations. Here, the whole discussion is maybe she had relations, we don't know, right? It's definitely not Rav Asi, to which they say, you're right. Tiyufta de Rav Asi tiyufta. This is a definite question. Now the Gemara says, but why don't you just say very simply, and maybe you were thinking this, you could still distinguish between, she's taken into captivity, most of the people are psulin. When she's in a room alone with a man, presumably she's having relations with some man in the city. Most of the people in the city are ksherim, or Jews who are ksherim. So why don't we just go by statistics, right? Probability. This must prove Rabbi Yehoshua's point. Amar Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, or supports him. He said, they are not taking probability into consideration here at all. Rabbi Yehoshua says, Rabbi Yehoshua, who apostles, doesn't distinguish. Even if the majority of people are ksherim, he still thinks she's psula to a kohen. You still have to assume the small chance that maybe she did. And Rabban Gamliel, who permits even if the majority of people are psulim, he's still going to say she's okay and she's believed. So therefore, it has nothing to do with what the statistics were. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Now we get back to this machloka we saw before. The one who permits her to be right. She's believed not only for herself, also for her daughter. And the one who disqualifies also her daughter. Meaning, there's no distinction. Rabbi Elazar, she's believed for herself, but not for her daughter. Amar Rava, my time de Rabbi Elazar. Why does he say that? Because she was kshera until proven otherwise. She had a presumptive status of kshera first. But her daughter was born from this already questionable relationship. She was born already with a suffix. She never had any presumptive status that we could say continue. And that's why according to Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Gamliel will permit because of her presumptive status is kshera. That's working in her favor. That doesn't work in her favor for the daughter. Eitive Rabbi Elazar le Rabbi Yehoshua, le Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Elazar now asked Rabbi Yochanan the following question from the Tosefta we just saw. What do we say? She's believed, but the vlad is a shtuki. What does it mean, shtuki? Does it not mean my love shtuki upasul, that the child has an unknown father and therefore she can't marry a kohen? Lo, shtuki v'kasher. No, we say the vlad is a shtuki, but she's kshera. Umi shtuki kasher. Is there such a thing? Yes, there is. As we learned in Yavamo, someone who remembers, Kiddush Shmuel de Amar Shmuel. You have a group of 10 kohanim. One of them slept with this woman. Havlad shtuki. The vlad is a shtuki. Now, my shtuki, what does it mean, shtuki? So, does it mean that the child tries to inherit the father's property and we say, no, you can't? That's pshita. Of course, the child can't go out to one of those random 10 people and say, you're my father. You wouldn't need a halacha to tell you that. It's obvious. You would have to prove he's the son and he can't. Must be talking about a woman. And what we're saying is, when it actually, no, this could be a man. Actually, my mistake. From working as a kohen in the temple, okay? Dichtiv. This is from this week's parsha, whether it's this past week or this coming week, depending on where you live. Parsha Pinchas, he and his sons after him. Which means the child can't work as a kohen in the temple unless they can trace their lineage back to their father. So this vlad is a shtuki that they can't trace their lineage back to their father. They can't be a kohen in the temple. But it doesn't mean that she can't marry a kohen. She could theoretically marry a kohen. It only has ramifications for this one issue of working as a kohen in the temple, okay? And eating truma, by the way. But more than that, it doesn't have ramifications. You could understand the source in that way, and that would then prove the opinion that she is believed about her daughter as well. With that, we will finish today's daf, and we'll pick up from here tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody.